G'day everyone, I'm Jake Phillips, Breed Development Officer at Angus Australia. Welcome back to the Stock Agents Toolkit, where we're unpacking everything you need to know to help your clients find the right sires for their operation this breeding season. Today, we're going to look at what you need to do before you start to look at the bulls for this season. And our first point on our journey to finding the right sires is to define your client's market. And this will be followed by a fundamental concept, which is defining your client's breeding objective. Well, we've got a heap of stuff to get through, so grab your pen, a notebook, a strong cuppa, and let's get into it. So why is meeting the market specifications so important? Well, a successful grazing enterprise runs a good chance of making a profit by converting feed into beef products that consistently meet market specifications, while also not increasing the production costs. Sounds easier said than done, but producers often strive to gain a reputation as a reliable supplier of quality beef and maintaining market access to as many markets as possible. And often the aim of a progressive producer is to be financially rewarded when a high proportion of stock consistently meet the customer's requirements. This is a win-win situation for the producer and the customer. A wide range of potential markets are available to beef producers in Australia, including the sale of weaners, vealers, feeder steers, backgrounding cattle for feedlots, pregnancy tested in-calf heifers and cows, unjoined heifers, domestic and/or export trade finished cattle, animals for live export, and other niche cattle markets. Each market has a defined specification for animals to return the highest price to the producer. One of the most helpful breeding and genetics decision-making tools available are selection indexes. There are 10 selection indexes published for animals within the Trans-Tasman Angus Cattle Evaluation, 2 of which are reported routinely in the EBVs, and these are the Angus Breeding Index as well as the Angus Breeding Index with low feed cost. The selection indexes cater for a range of different breeding systems, target markets and production systems, and include the following list available on the Angus Australia website or in most sale catalogues. The task to do first is to review the selection indexes with your client and find the one that best describes their production system and target market. Then, utilising this index as a filtering tool, you will save yourself lots of time by being able to apply the index to your sire search. By identifying an index and then placing some emphasis on it, you will also get a response to selection. And that response to selection, as discussed in earlier modules of the Stock Agents Toolkit, will be across all traits that are contained within that index. As a selection index acts as a balanced decision of economic value per cow joined. However, don't be afraid, the decision-making process is not taken out of your hands or your clients'. In fact, it is still a crucial step to then place the client's 3 to 5 traits of importance over the index to ensure that the traits of most importance are making the most genetic gain in their herd. So once we've defined the market and chosen the selection index that most closely aligns with our client's production system, we can then begin to define the breeding objective. One of the first questions to ask is, do we need to target certain traits in order to comply to the target market? An example of a producer wanting to do this is someone that wants to increase their sale weight of their weaners and also increase the consistency in the age of the calf crop. They also want to increase their marbling genetic merit for their carcasses or potentially maintain the weight of their mature cows. These are all production traits. And once you have defined what production traits need to be addressed or would like to be changed, we can then review the tools available to help make a decision to improve that trait. A couple of key components to be considered in a breeding objective are we interested in the trait for genetic improvement in that area, as well as are we interested in that trait because of management reasons? And an example of this is docility, where the expectation is that a bull's temperament will be acceptable in the paddock and in the stockyards. However, that doesn't in itself impact his genetic merit of the docility being inherited by his progeny. And if you're selling them as weaners or vealers, this may then be becoming someone else's issue to deal with, unless you're keeping a sharp eye on the genetic docility inherited from progeny. A breeding objective trait for genetic improvement needs to be objective, and this means that you need to be able to measure them and to set goals. An example of the EBVs that will assist our producer in the example that we used a little earlier would be that selecting on 200 day weight EBVs would likely increase the sale weight of his calves, as well as selecting on days to calving EBVs to increase the number of females getting in calf and therefore calving from the first cycle with the bull. As well as this, the IMF EBV, as this is the premium for the finished product that is being realised by their customers. And their other consideration was mature cow weight. The mature cow weight EBV would ensure that the genetic merit of their cow herd is not increasing each year, and therefore maintaining the average feed cost associated with maintaining the herd. A key feature to setting a breeding objective is to review it every so often to see if things are on track and allow it to evolve over time, as your clients will therefore meet targets by selecting certain genetics. Each producer will have 3 to 5 traits that are important to them, and based on their circumstance, so often everyone will be different. However, it is those 3 to 5 traits that will make their initial objective and be the first steps on the road to genetic gain. After you've defined the 3 to 5 traits of most importance, it's then important to give them some emphasis. From our example that we looked at earlier, we're going to again look at 200 day weight days to calving and marbling and place them in the top 25% of the breed, as these traits are the most economically important to that producer, compared to the other traits of calving ease where, for example, maintaining breed average is acceptable to them. This is well described in a normal bell curve distribution, showing the population of genetic merit for certain traits and where they sit in reference to the average of that population. Generally, a selection to the right will encourage the most genetic gain in that particular trait. However, it should be a balanced decision that takes into account not only the extra income that is likely to be gained, but what are also the extra costs. A trait where this is a good example is mature cow weight, which is strongly linked to increased feed costs as cows get physically bigger. But these increased feed costs may not be fully offset by the extra income that is achieved by heavier cull cows when they are sold. Once the producer starts to meet their breeding goals, this emphasis may then be relaxed over time somewhat and end up closer to breed average, as new traits will become more important and become the priority. Selecting cattle in higher percentiles will speed up the rate of genetic gain in those traits, and it should be a key focus to work out what the priority traits are first. As you can see, it's a fluid process, and we would suggest visiting this regularly with your client to make sure that you're on track. Well, it's now time to hit the road or the internet and find some seed stock operators that align with the bulls that we've identified as suiting our production targets and breeding goals. The following questions should be considered when seeking out a seed stock breeder to supply our bulls for this breeding season. For example, do they offer Angus bulls carrying genetics that are consistent with the breeding goals and objectives of the breeding program of our client? And do they offer Angus bulls that are of equivalent or superior genetic merit to the bulls that we've been using in the past to ensure that we're going to be maintaining genetic gain? Do they offer Angus bulls with a full set of TACE EBVs and selection indexes, and particularly for traits that have been identified as being most important to our client? Do they offer Angus bulls with known status for genetic conditions to ensure that we know everything about those bulls before we join them to the cows? And do they offer Angus bulls that have been subject to a veterinary bull breeding soundness evaluation, including a semen test? As well as, do they provide information about the vaccination and health treatments that have been provided to the bulls available for selection? By addressing these questions early in the piece, you'll run the best chance of having the bulls being fit and able to pass on the best genetics to the progeny this breeding season. In summary, the steps are: Define your client's market, find the most appropriate selection index for your client's situation, define their breeding objective, which is the 3 to 5 traits of the highest importance. We can then set acceptability, and this is based on keeping a balance between the choice of size on offer and making the most amount of genetic gain in the traits that have been identified as being the most important. You can then review the reduced list of size and begin to identify suitable seed stock breeders to go out and visit to see if they're going to be good candidates to supply the size that you need for this breeding season. Well, we've covered a huge amount in this module of the Stock Agents Toolkit, and hopefully this gives you a little bit more confidence to discuss with your client what is your target market and what traits are important to you, as well as where do you need to make the most amount of genetic gain first. All of these things are good practice to review every couple of years, as if it's done its job, what you'll find is that if you've worked on it for a while, then all of a sudden it'll become not so much of a problem and there'll be new market focus or traits to improve on. Next time on the Stock Agents Toolkit, we're going to be getting behind the computer and driving the industry-leading Angus tech. That's right, I'll be showing you how to find an animal, how to find a sale catalogue, and how to put in your search criteria as well as your new breeding objective EBVs into the search. But until then, thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward to seeing you again next time as we continue to unpack the Stock Agents Toolkit.